Ramos.
Tonight, we are going to review one of our new titles that came out. It's called Supergirl, World's Tomorrow by Tom King, and with artist Bilquis Evely with Mathis Lopes. So we are super excited to review this book. It just dropped the trade, but this book came out last year, and we've been looking to do a Tom King book for a while. We just couldn't choose one because he's a very big up and coming writer, and up and coming, I mean, he's been doing it for like 6 years, but Tom King's kind of a unique writer. He's kind of like part of the new guard, I think, that's been coming around.
Yeah, he's almost like choosy with the stories he wants to write, because I think he waits for the characters that he cares about, and then maybe characters that I feel like he's been reinventing some characters, and that's like what DC and everyone else wants him to do, is just take someone and bring them back to, the forefront, give them a little more personality than they already have.
Absolutely. And, Tom King, he actually is kind of, yes and no. He's known for his Batman run, which was supposed to be 100 issues. It did get cut short, so he got to about the 75, 80 mark, and then it got kind of wrapped up in another story. But he was kind of one of the big writers that came around and said, I want to do a 100-issue story. And we've talked about in previous episodes, nobody does that anymore.
Yeah. And, you got to kind of get your chops going on that one, and, burn yourself into the industry a little more before you can just throw that down. But he's also super well known for Miracle Man.
Yes, that is probably
super well known.
Known for Miracle Man. He did Vision. The Vision from Marvel Comics.
Yes,
that was super exciting.
And that was just a short run too. So like this one, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, is 8 issues.
Yeah.
And when I was looking up some of the single issues, this is the collected edition, so there's all 8 in one volume, and it's like $20 for the trade paperback. So it's cool.
Less than that. Yeah.
I was looking them up, and they're $3.99 per comic.
Yep.
And a few places I saw where like there was a long wait in between, sometimes 2 or 3 months. So okay, fine. You just gotta
with all the
catch
delays and everything that 2021 brought along with it, things like that.
You never know what's going to happen. So it's like collecting singles is awesome, but you got to make sure that you
get the complete story.
Stick with it. You got to stick with it.
Absolutely. And so the classic thing that Tom King fans have been known to follow him for is for his short storytelling. Yes, his Batman run is kind of mixed reviews. It's very controversial. Either you like it, you hate it. He did some really innovative things for the characters, but Tom King does the best with 12 to 8 issue stories. Like that is his bread and butter, and he can do so much with so little. And he's kind of found that like niche format.
Yeah, I mean,
he excels at
packing his story into one issue. Even when I was reading through this collect edition, you don't really, because when they collect single issues, they don't put the cover like you would recognize with the barcode and all that stuff. They do have the cover.
Trades, they don't. They put it like, cover gallery in the back.
Yeah, or they just have like a blank page to show like, hey, this is the next step. Right. So or a title page showing like, hey, here's the artists and writers. But the story just literally just pops right to the next. So you could tell he wrote it as a long story, and then they're like, all right, where can we chop this up? That was maybe an idea on that.
Yeah. So that's really cool that Tom King. I would never expected him to write Supergirl. But he has been, besides doing the Vision, like he's been a very big DC fan. I think he's probably had a long-standing contract with them. So he's just worked on such like Miracle Man, Dick Grayson, Nightwing. He reinvented that character when he was going through like an identity crisis. So he's like a super spy. Yeah. That's been really cool. He did the Metal Man for a little bit. That wasn't so hot, but his big thing was Sheriffs of Babylon. That was an original story he put together. He's did work on Rorschach from Watchmen. He did original story for that character, Human Target. Worked with some very amazing artists over time. So I encourage you to, whatever Tom King story you read, go pick up some of his work and just try it.
Yeah. And his writing, especially on the Supergirl here, is um I want to say it's a equal combination of comic book feel and like big book prose,
I
like,
agree.
novels, like,
Yes.
his writing
And
is
it but
is
it and I think he writes,
elevated, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
and I think he kind of writes for, like, the characters that he imagines or things like that, because this does feel a little different than his writing in Miracle Man or Vision that I've
Yeah.
read. And so I think he writes kind of like, oh, hey, I haven't tried this style, or this style might seem interesting, but I'll still put my spin on it and things like that. So I do appreciate that about him. I know, like, Rorschach, for me, I didn't enjoy it because I was like, this is too wordy. I'm getting lost in it. It was hard to get
Mhm.
into.
Yeah.
This and but you know what? I read Vision. That was such an epic story. Miracle Man, epic. Oh, I can recount that story so much, and I have vivid memories about this. Supergirl, I love this story.
Yeah.
This was
It
great.
was
What would you think about it, Ramos?
I thought it was really a lot of fun because while it was Supergirl, like we've been kind of building up, um, while it is Supergirl, it's also the Supergirl that like Tom King wants to see. And
Yes.
he probably did a fair amount of research. You can tell that he sort of jumped into her character of like what really makes Supergirl tick, you know?
Hmm.
And I would do the same if you
Yeah.
were being thrown into a character that maybe you haven't written before. I'm sure he's read a lot of Supergirl, but he hasn't written any Superman, so
Right.
that
Maybe
part
this
of
and
it.
that, little bits here and
Yeah,
there, but
not the
nothing
main
like
title.
long going. And also, I appreciate about any Tom King story, maybe outside of Batman, is that it's all out of continuity for the most part.
Yeah.
Which it
Well,
can be could be controversial because you could be like, well, where does this take place?
and I was gonna say, as far as continuity goes, so if it's if it's a printed comic, I guess it's canon, right? Like it happened at some
Yeah,
point.
sure.
But DC and Marvel are both very, very good at really dodging like years and dates and like not
Yes,
printing exactly
sure.
where this came from.
Hmm.
The only hint you get in this comic is that in the beginning, Supergirl is celebrating
Her
her
21st
21st birthday,
birthday.
which is
Yeah.
funny that she's doing
Yeah.
it. And she chose to fly out to a planet. Now that we're getting into the
Yeah.
story, I suppose,
Jumping into it.
she
Yeah.
she chose to fly out to a planet that had a red sun, and which takes her powers away.
Yep. All
And
that happens for all Kryptonians.
yes, so red suns
Where
are
she like
bad for
Superman
them.
and Supergirl are from.
It depowers them. I don't want to say it makes them like a human. It just depowers
Yeah, it
them a
like
little
turns off
bit.
like a light switch. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Kryptonians are already strong.
Right.
So, and if you look at some of the Superman lore, like he still has reserves that are in his cells, and it takes a while for those to go away.
Sure.
So, like, um, I think we'll talk about it a little later, but
Hmm.
like Superman's been absorbing the yellow sun since his birth,
Right.
and Supergirl has not.
Yes.
She grew up on Krypton, and so she's had quite a few years where she was, I think, even into a teenager.
Yeah.
Before she had to go. Anyway, she's on a red sun, and she chooses to spend time at a bar and just drink and celebrate her
Right.
21st birthday.
Because I guess and I don't know if it's correct or not, but usually like Superman and things and her, they can't really they have like a high metabolism.
Yeah, well, or they just like heal fast.
Heal
So,
fast.
if
So,
you think about it.
drinking and consuming copious amounts of
Yeah.
alcohol, lots of it, they don't really get affected by it much. So going to a planet where that kind of that ability gets turned off for a little bit, she can actually enjoy herself.
Yeah.
I could see that appeal.
But, on the flip side, I don't really know if there's a story written out there where Superman is like, hey, I want to go get drunk on another
Yeah,
planet.
right.
So
Like,
Supergirl.
I can't really recall that.
Yeah.
So,
So Supergirl already, Tom King is setting her up as sort of like, hey, I'm a little bit of a rebellious, mentality here. So
yeah.
that was fun to see of just like, okay. And then she's like swearing too. So it's like,
Yes.
okay, that's
And
cool. Like Tom
that's a
King is
cool
doing.
character choice for her because if you are taking it back to an average 21-year-old, like you're gonna cut loose a little bit. You
Yeah.
want to really feel, getting to like making her relatable character for that time.
And she was like covering up her costume. So she doesn't want people
Yeah.
to see that she's,
She's kind of
doing
being
this.
incognito. She's doing her own
I
thing. She's
mean,
celebrating.
the
Yeah.
shield, the S on this
Hmm.
is well known throughout every galaxy, so you can't really escape that. And she even says later on too that every time they bump into someone, they're trying to prove themselves. They sort of have
Yes.
that like Bruce Lee uh, uh, reputation where people want to always say, "Oh, you're Supergirl," and then just
Right.
try to fight
Yeah.
them. Yeah,
Right. Because she has this, heroic reputation like her cousin
and if they
Superman
can
does.
best her, then it's like, great, I put Supergirl down.
Right. So it makes having fun a hard time.
uh,
So yeah.
so then the main character is introduced, and the story is like a first person telling from her. Like she's
Yes.
writing, she is writing in a journal or a
Mm-hmm.
story, so she's recounting these events. You get an idea that Tom King, what he does is he kind of sets the scene, and then he peppers in a few other like foreshadowing moments,
Yes.
where she's like, as I'm recalling these scenes from years ago, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, that's her. So writing from the future, like, so
Right.
you're kind of piecing the story together
Yeah,
bit
because
by
it
bit.
goes between like, yeah, writing kind of in hindsight of it, and then writing as the supporting co-main character. Ruthie is her name. That I think, and she's at least we know her to be an original character that Tom King made.
Yeah, and she's an alien of
She's
some
telling,
sort.
right. She is telling the story of Supergirl. It's not really Supergirl telling the story. It's
Yes,
her adventures with her.
right. And it starts off with Ruthie's Ruthie finds her dad has been killed, and
Yep.
there's a sword, and she takes that sword, and it kind of s- begins this journey of vengeance
Yes.
and
Quest. The quest for
quest, the quest
vengeance.
for vengeance, and to see who did this. And so she's trying to like enlist a mercenary or a hero
Yeah.
to join her, and she's not
Right.
having good luck until she
That's like
bumps
one
in.
of her first like trials she goes through is Ruthie goes to this random bounty hunter and says, "Hey, will you go help find? I have to even though they
Krem,
say
is it
Krem,
Krem?
yes, Krem,
Krem of the Yellow
Krem of the
Hills.
Yellow Hill. By the time you get done reading this book, you will not forget his name because
Yeah.
Tom King says so much there. But it's part of her character, and that's
Yeah.
part of the way she was
It's
written and the way she recounts her story. Is I'm on a quest to
it's the
kill,
only
Kremlin of the Yellow Hill.
thing she must do.
Kremlin of the
It's
Yellow
her
Hill.
only
That's her
drive.
biggest. Yeah, that's her
Yeah.
drive in life right
Yep.
now. After her father died, that's her drive. And so, yeah, this bounty hunter, he doesn't really care about that so much. He just wants a sword. She's
Mhm.
like, you're just gonna run with a sword, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll think about it. I'll consider it. I'm just gonna walk over here. You're gonna go that way. Can I come with you? No. So she's like, I'll take that sword back. No. And then Supergirl like saves her from him. And then they become like, oh, okay. Supergirl takes up the quest. And she's like, all right, well, actually, she doesn't initially takes up the quest. We find out in the beginning here, Crypto, her loyal companion who is on her adventure for
Yes.
some reason,
Crypto the dog.
right? Featured in Super Friends and Super Pets and things like that. She's on, this quest, this adventure with Supergirl, celebrating her 21st, whatever. And he's also part Kryptonian, so he's not affected by he's affected by the sun and things like that. Right off the bat, Crypto gets hurt
Yeah.
severely, like poison, and that's what Supergirl's stake in the story is.
Yeah. So then she's like, fine, I'm going to help you. And this gives me a reason to also
Yeah,
make sure that you don't
right.
get in over your
Yeah,
head.
and her big thing with Ruthie was Ruthie has seen Crumb, so she could identify him if out in the public. Supergirl actually never saw him, so that was really kind of the nuances. Okay, my dog's hurt, and I want to help you with your quest.
Yeah. And our quests become
One,
intertwined.
yeah, intertwined. So that was
So,
really cool to like see that. Okay, here's connecting the dots, and we're getting this like narrator perspective.
and I kind of got the feeling there's a couple of things with the story in general. Number one, it did remind me a little bit of Superman up in the sky. And we
Yeah,
were
we were
just talked
talking
about
about
you
that.
just
Yeah,
talked
in the
about
car.
that.
Yeah.
And he is in that story, just to really sum it up, a girl is kidnapped and taken like galaxies away, and Superman doesn't stop till he finds her. So
You're
it
right.
shows
That's
like,
very similar. There.
yeah, it
Yeah.
shows like his drive is just as immeasurable as his strength. So it's
Mm.
like he'll never give up. If he's on a quest, he'll never give up. And Supergirl at first, you kind of see her as a little bit, I don't know, Tom King sets her up as like a flawed character where
Yes.
she's like, leave me alone. I don't want to do anything. And
Yeah.
she's kind of lost a little bit in herself.
Right.
And
Which it could
she's,
be part of the reason why she just wanted to go incognito for a bit.
yes, like hide out on some far planet. But, um, things like this, heroic things find heroic people. And,
Yeah.
and Supergirl is, in my mind, when we were reading this, she became just as driven as Superman, and she became just as heroic as Superman, which everyone kind of already fell in love with Supergirl in the
Sure.
80s,
Mm-hmm.
like before Crisis on Infinite Earths. She really, really, really had a strong following. Supergirl came out, we were like May of 1959.
Yup. Action Comics number 252, me,
Kara
1959.
Zor-El, and it was called the Supergirl from Krypton. So
Mm-hmm.
just so everyone knows, her cousin is Superman.
Yes.
Her dad is Zor-El, and
Mm-hmm.
her dad's brother is
Yeah.
Jor-El,
Well.
and that's Superman's dad.
Yep. There's the
So
family tree.
yes, so Superman's dad and her dad are brothers,
Yep.
and so Superman and her are cousins.
Yeah. Right. So that was really cool. I've never read a Supergirl story before, so this was really interesting to get to know the character and just kind of see what makes her tick and everything. And it was different, especially from a supporting character, kind of telling like her journey. So yeah, I liked how Tom King he takes instead of like, yes, we established the villain is Creme of the of
Remember the
of
Yellow
the
Hills.
Creme of the Yellow Hills. You'll never forget it. And so he established that right away. But Creme steals the ship, Supergirl ship. So literally, they have to do it the old-fashioned way, where they have to hop a freighter, go across to this next planet,
Space in general, yeah.
space travel adventure.
And she can't fly because
Can't
she's
fly
kind of
because
like,
she's depowered
yeah, she's getting
for the
her
most
power
part.
back.
Yep. And so it's this big long journey. Um,
And they said like months and months. And I
Months
was
and
like,
months.
wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And it's kind of interesting how that happens because it's not so much defeating the villain as the saying goes, it's the journey to get there. And Tom King embraces that mannerism.
And so there's the text bubbles are written from Ruthie. So
Yeah.
you see her giving a lot about what she's observing from Supergirl. She's giving a lot about like how long they've been traveling. She's giving a lot about, hey, I'm going to bring attention to this one part, this one
Mhm.
scene that involved me and Supergirl bonding a little
Yeah.
bit. And then it was like, imagine lots more of these things. I'm not going to go through them in detail. Just imagine that this happened a lot more. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, that's a really cool, like writing,
Yeah.
narrative to just for Tom King to say, hey, we're not going to tell the story of every single thing that happened months and months
Yeah,
and
months
months
and months.
space
Yeah.
travel. So just imagine there was a lot more of these kinds of interactions. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like when that one guy came up and said, "You're Supergirl, I'm going to fight you."
Yeah.
It was like, just imagine this happened a lot
Mhm.
more. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. And it's in like their rest stop at a bar. It's like,
Yeah.
you're Supergirl. I'm gonna fight you. I get this high praise and reward. And it's like, but I'm still Supergirl. Like I still know how to fight and protect us.
Yeah. And well, there's some of that funny like Star Trekky stuff where
Oh
it's like
yeah, totally. There's
where
gotta
all
be
the
some.
aliens are like doing mundane normal jobs,
Yep.
like they're bartenders and they're grocery store
Right.
workers and they're waiters and waitresses.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just funny that, for us to imagine that there are other civilizations out there with people who are blue and have four
Right.
eyes
Yeah.
and they're shopping at a grocery store, like, I don't know,
Right.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's funny to throw that in
Oh,
there.
totally. Like one like character they run into like leans too much on Ruthie, and she's like, "Can you get off of me? Even I smell bad, and you smell way bad." And he's like, "But who's gonna make me?" Well, here's Supergirl. Let me tell you the legend of Supergirl. And she goes on and on and on. And Supergirl's like, "Hey." It's like, okay.
And
So those interactions are priceless. I love those.
yeah, and there's like certain storylines that he spends some time on.
Yeah.
One of them was the planet of so I guess we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So they're chasing after Krem across the
Yes.
galaxy, and they're sort of on his heels, and he joined with a
Y-
group of like space pirates,
Space pirates. Yeah.
and they're ruthless and they're just conquering, and they're almost space um like Genghis Khan of
Yes.
space, and so they're
Absolutely.
just taking over, and they do a lot of atrocities, and they kill a lot of people who shouldn't have been killed.
Yeah. The
Um,
brigands.
yeah, and so sometimes the story gets very serious when Supergirl and Ruthie kind of come across their most recent Holocaust that the
Yeah,
Krem
that was
did, or
like, oh, so yeah,
a lot
that
of sad moments where you're
yeah, I
like,
was like,
"Geez,
oh, okay.
yeah,
We didn't expect to go there. Why don't we see these people? Oh, there's a
yeah,
reason.
entire civilizations and things." So
And you find out it's because of these pirates and everything.
and they're
So there's
just
that.
doing it just for
Yeah.
fun. And Supergirl is slowly, you could tell she's slowly building into this um like climax of just
Yeah.
anger and vengeance. And so
Mhm.
you see Supergirl kind of take on a little more of a like these people must pay kind of thing. But
Right.
then at the same
It's a
time,
fine line between Superman and her ulterior moment
yeah.
motives of vengeance.
So she's
It's
like, we
a
have
fine
to
line.
help them, but they will also, we have to help these people. So every planet she stops at
Yeah.
where someone says, oh, our entire city was wiped out,
Hmm.
Supergirl helps where she can. And
Yeah.
and Ruthie makes comments of that of like she is very much a Supergirl.
Yes.
She has that super heart, but
Yeah.
she also has superpower. So it's like she balances it.
Right. And there was I like the plot element of talking about different kinds of kryptonite. That was cool. When there's one point when they're in the the space bus or whatever, and there's a space dragon that comes along, and the pilot's like, "Hey, so Supergirl, you're here.
Yeah. Like this
Hey,
dragon's gonna
so this
destroy
dragon's
us.
gonna kill us." This is after like months and months and months of being on this thing. Like, hey, we can't deal with this. What do you can you help?
And
And
Supergirl's like, I have
yeah,
no
she goes
powers.
back into like the people that are traveling. Goes, I know you have the Reds. Cough them up, come
Yeah.
on, and they take them for a drug where she takes them to regain her powers momentarily, like supercharges her powers.
Yeah, and you find out that the drug is actually a tiny little red
Yeah.
kryptonite pill. And um,
Just yeah,
for Superman, anyone from Krypton, they're very, very attuned to like color spectrums.
yeah.
And so
It was something that was kind of developed like in that 80s period,
yeah,
right?
they
80s,
call it like
90s.
solar numian or something. There's actually a word for how Superman absorbs his powers. It's like
Right.
solar neutrino. Um,
Because the writers
it's
wanted to be cool at the time
so
and said,
yeah.
"Hey, let's talk about all the
Someone's
other
gonna
ones."
Google me on this, but
Right.
it's always
I
been
guess it
stuck in
was
my
kind of
head.
happening in the 50s
Yeah,
too, but
solar numinorian. I
yeah,
don't know.
whatever.
So, but if you have a red sun, you lose your powers. If you have a green sun, it just depowers you slowly,
Yeah,
kind of kills you.
right.
Um,
That was such an interesting
that
plot point
that
that
one
Tom
was
King
like my
touches
best
on.
story.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have a blue sun, then it I think raises your powers. But then they have kryptonite of all different colors that
Right.
does so. Green kryptonite obviously is poison to them. Red kryptonite is like the anomaly. They don't know what red kryptonite will do to
Right.
you when you're
Mhm.
exposed to
Oh,
it.
right,
You
because
could
she's like, either I could like go in berserker
Yeah, I could
rage,
like
or
lose
I
my
could do this.
mind and kill everyone,
Yeah,
or I
or I
could
could do this, or I could do what
evolve
we
or
do to
grow
kill
horns or
myself.
something. Like so it
Yeah.
does it does some random mutation.
And I don't know if this is a good way segue for this, but when she takes that red kryptonite pill, like she turns into all to almost a phoenix
Yeah,
character. And
like
I don't know if that was on purpose because of like her heat ray vision and kind of just out of control of that. But that imagery, wow,
yeah, it was like
so powerful.
she turned into like half a goddess or something like that. It
Yeah,
was awesome.
sure. And that is a good segue, I guess, for talking about the art that we see in this in Supergirl World of Tomorrow. Bilquis Everly is like Tom King, an award-winning like artist. Tom King's an award, Eisner Award winning writer. So it's but I've never seen any of her work. She's done some work for like Sandman, DC projects, and things like that, and little small stuff. But to see this on the page, wow.
Yeah.
This art, we recently reviewed Alex Ross's, Fantastic Four story. I thought was pretty good art. But if we take away that story for a minute, might be my favorite art of the year.
Yeah, I really, really,
I was very impressed by this.
I was really impressed too. Yeah, because there's some scenes where they kind of have to be a little goofy, and there's some scenes where you have to be very serious, and there's some
Yes.
scenes that have to be like epic, and there's some scenes that are in space and on planets, and it, she just jumps from one to the next really, really well.
Yeah.
The Supergirl sometimes um, looks a little like, I was trying to think, like, she looks a little foreign, but that's because she's just
Right.
so up against everyone else that's in there, you
Right.
know?
Against a lot of aliens and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but they always kept like her like striking blue eyes, and always
Sure.
kept her costume, and always kept sort of the coloring of the page two worked really well with the artist. But
Hmm.
yeah, I just I thought it was a good team. It kind of
Yeah.
lended itself to the quirkiness of Tom King's writing,
Yes.
because it's like quirky art a little bit
Right.
with like quirky writing.
Yeah.
But no, very, very good art,
Like
uh,
it's not
layouts
it's not
too.
completely fantasy based, but like the scenes that lent itself to being fantasy, like fighting that dragon scene, turning into Phoenix.
Yes.
Oh, nails it. 10 out of 10. Um, just completely takes over the scene. Or like when they're on a different planet and there's like bodies everywhere, or like you want to invoke an emotion or tell like backstory. Oh man, it just brings so much raw emotion to it. And the color scheme. Oh my god. I could go on and on. But uses a lot of purples and blues and like deep reds. Um, and I guess maybe that's because it's kind of like on a matte paper, so it kind of
Hmm.
brings that out. But and like there's just something about the way they use blue in this. I was like, that's good.
Well, and just even the brush strokes and the line work, is
Yeah.
like really fluid. It's like really swoopy in
Hmm.
parts. So like her hair and her cape is always kind of like all over the
Right.
wacky place. But then some of the scenery gets super detailed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's just some really great pages that I think this one kind of reminds me. There's a scene where there's like a giant alien, and
Yeah.
he's sort of Supergirl just sort of lets him pummel her just to get his frustration out.
Yeah.
But this
For both
reminds
of
me a
them, I
lot
think.
of
Yeah.
like Wonder Woman, Dead
Oh.
Earth a little bit,
Oh
because
yeah.
it's just like the way that
Okay.
it moves.
Right. So I can see a little bit of Daniel Warren Johnson. I can see a
Yeah,
little bit of that in there. I can
a little
see
bit.
a little bit in the characters like figures. I can see a little bit of Jay Lee and Michael Turner. Kind of that
Yeah,
style.
yeah, because they're
Those
like
styles kind of
longer, they're
blended
like
together.
stretched out. Yeah,
Yeah. So I just thought of Jay Lee when I was like looking at faces and you're talking about that. I'm like, that's a little bit like Jay Lee.
just and when she's flying, just like the movement around her, and like
Yeah.
line work. And so yeah, a lot of times when the artist really lines up with the writing, it's
Yeah.
just really, really great. And so many people were giving such high praise for this comic. I knew we wanted to read it. It just came out in July, collected
Well, no, I think
July,
it was even. I think I got
or even
this a couple
sooner.
weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, so I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the last issue was in
Oh,
July,
right. Yeah.
and then they collected it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's, for us, it was like, hey, there's a short list of comics that are out now, and we can always
Sure.
jump back and read some other things. But
Oh,
like,
we always like to talk about like what's new,
yeah.
what's going on, what are people talking about, what are some of the great comics that are coming out today.
So one of the storylines is, yeah, there's blue people and purple people,
Yeah,
and there's another
that was
storyline. Yeah,
intense.
that was intense. That was like weird genocide stuff thing.
Yeah,
So,
but I do think that
but
kind of really solidified that story and
mhm,
just made that impact. Like this is how bad these guys are.
yeah, yeah, you really learn to root her on to catch these pirates, because they're
Yeah.
just doing
Right.
terrible things.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's another storyline where um, Supergirl and Ruthie get, uh, I want to say, without ruining anything, they get transported
Yes.
to a planet
Yeah.
that has a green sun
And dinosaurs.
and dinosaurs and terrible, yeah, monsters. And they made mention that Supergirl's like, I know this planet, and the green sun slowly kills them,
Yeah.
slowly kills Kryptonians. It's
Right.
just like green kryptonite, except in a sun.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so she said the planet is Barrington, and that Superman was uh, kidnapped and
Yeah,
trapped
he's
there
very similar to
to
what
that same
what she's
planet.
going through. Same planet, same scenario.
And so Ruthie was like, well, it looks like the sun is setting, halfway through the sky or whatever. And she's like, all right, I just have to hang on for like 10 hours. And she's like, how long did Superman last? And she's like,
45
45
minutes.
minutes, before the Justice League
She's like,
rescued him.
explicitive? Yeah.
Yes.
Censored
And
that.
so
Yep.
Supergirl just sort of fell over and she's just like counting down,
Right.
like sun's almost setting, sun's almost setting. And it's a great, great, great story. It's well
Yeah.
paced. It was awesome. It's like in the middle of this whole book. So
Yeah,
it's like really,
I
really
think
good.
it's towards the back half, but still like at a point where they're still going through their hero's journey and things like
Yeah.
that. And that I think, even though they spent a lot of time like in the spaceship to get there, space like they went through that whole weird planet with segregation and things like that to this kind of solidified why that was important to be there and what's the importance of their relationship with each other, like outside of like all the politics and why they're there and things like that.
Yeah. And I looked up
Very personal,
yeah,
conversations.
I looked up like when was Superman on this planet,
Yeah.
like planet Barrington. So I kind of looked it up. It said that there is a story back in the 70s that was Superman being trapped on a planet. And what the storyline was, it was a red sun and I'm sorry, it was a yellow sun planet and Superman went there, but everyone was blind. And then they put like a filter over the sun. I don't know. It's like, like
because it was the 70s.
yeah, and they put a filter over
experimenting.
the sun, which changed it green, and then Superman started losing and dying.
That was
So-
like when Green Lantern, he was
Some-
affected by everything yellow.
well, and that was when like comics were like, we can run any color we want. So now
Right.
we're gonna just play
green.
with all the colors.
Yeah.
So they were trying to think of like what could we possibly come up with that would hurt Superman? And it's like,
Sure.
how about color spectrums?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it shows because a lot of people the feeling out there with Supergirl is that she's stronger than Superman. And
Yes,
you do hear
I've
that
heard
a lot.
that. I've heard that
A lot that
You
she's
can't
stronger.
You can kind of confirm that, but not. That's very like, I read this here, I read this there, but then I read this thing, and then I read the other thing. So it's hard to like confirm that. Yes, this is actually a thing. You can have a debate beyond among your friends.
so here's a little thing that popped up. It says many characters in the DC universe have noted that Supergirl appears at times to be even more powerful than Superman himself. In answer to this, Superman states that this is because he has spent his entire life subconsciously suppressing his full powers.
Right, you hear that too, or he doesn't go full out.
In order to avoid hurting others, having absorbed solar radiation since his infancy. So he's been absorbing yellow sun for his whole life. And Kara had showed up and she has no practice or experience. She's trained at Krypton. She's trained in their like
she left
martial
there when
fighting.
she was in her early teens.
Yeah, so she actually was trained at the Crucible Academy. So like she knows how to fight. And so it says that she always uses the full magnitude of her powers.
Sure.
Like, so she doesn't hold back.
Yeah. The only thing, like Superman when he was fighting Doomsday, he didn't hold back. That was like an example where he didn't.
Right. So for her, it's like people are saying, okay, well, she lived on Krypton for quite some time. She watched Krypton be destroyed.
Mhm.
And she went through all of the regular training that a Kryptonian would. So,
Sure.
So I think she's got a little more edge to her. She's got a little more. Superman's always thinking, how can I diplomatically get out of this?
Sure.
And so for her, she's just like,
No.
especially the way Tom King writes her, she swears, she fights, she brawls, she
Yeah.
fights.
A little more
everywhere.
nonchalant.
Yeah.
Carefree.
She doesn't back down.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. If she did, she ain't Supergirl. So yeah, that Green Sun story, amazing personal journey.
That was
for
my
those two
favorite story
characters.
in all of this. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think there's
awesome.
little Jack Kirby, big monsters and everything, maybe influence. When we were talking about a deep dive, Superman went there in like the 70s.
Yeah.
There was another character we were talking about on the pre-show, got Comet the Super Horse.
Comet the Super Horse.
Comet the Super Horse, I didn't know was a thing. Because when they find this super horse, it's from like another character. They kind of find it just nonchalantly, like she does, like Supergirl does, like call it by name and things like that. Oh, this is Comet. We're like, what?
And I guess if you were like a super long time reader of
Yes.
all things
Right.
super, then you would have come across Comet as
Yeah.
one of the super animals of the heyday of
Yeah.
super animals, which is like
Uh,
Crypto,
yeah, 1962,
Super
roughly.
Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day, yeah, a Streaky the super cat, Beeple the super monkey, Crypto the super dog, and Comet the super horse. And it's a very like, 60s, 50s thing to like come up with. Hey,
But
we're
that was
gonna
pre Crisis on
crisis.
Infinite Earths.
Right.
So
Everything was
then
super powerful all the time.
their
They could do
stories
anything.
were everywhere, every story you could think of. And then Crisis on Infinite Earth sort of helped reset the
Reset
DC
things.
universe a little
Yes.
bit. So
That's your quick explainer.
yeah, that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah. So anyways, so yeah, Tom King uses again another deep dive character to be like, hey, what if Supergirl runs across her old mate Comet? That's fun.
Bring
And
her
so it's
horse in
like,
here.
holy cow. Like he's not exactly a Pegasus, but he's just a flying super horse. He can't talk, but he's just as powerful as Supergirl.
Blasting through the galaxies. Yeah,
Galaxy.
yeah.
And it's so much fun. I love Comet. He's great.
So the funny thing with that too
Kind of
is
steals the scene sometimes.
yeah. So Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, she was introduced in 1959. She did all sorts of stories and all sorts of
Yes.
timeline stories and all sorts of everything. And then Superman could move,
Yeah.
planets and all that stuff. And then in 1985, Crisis on Infinite Earth came, and Kara Zor-El was one of the characters that was killed and erased.
Mhm.
So everyone freaked out. It's like, oh, by the way, there is no Supergirl.
Yep.
And so they retconned her like out of
Yeah.
DC, all
Not
of
as
it.
much as Wonder Woman, but
Yeah. So they just
that's a
like,
story for another day.
so then later on in 2016, DC Rebirth came around
Yep.
and started reintroducing these characters. And so she is officially back. So we know that this Supergirl that Tom King is writing, that she is at least the newer Supergirl, not
Mhm.
pre-crisis Supergirl. She's the
Yeah.
newer Supergirl after 2016. And so this is her timeline somewhere in her life
Yeah.
around that time, which is
Right.
it's cool to
And
see that she does other adventures.
sure, and it's ultimately it's up to the writers of the time to dictate how powerful a superhero is. If they go
Yeah.
back to continuity and things like that, or they say, "Oh, it kind of fits in here," it doesn't have to be like straight linear. It could be like, "Oh, we're gonna do like a past story." We don't
Yeah.
really, it's not really explained, and we talked about that earlier in the show. So
Yeah, and it also shows that when Supergirl wants to sort of take some time away from Earth, she can
do space adventures.
go from one end of the galaxies to the other. Like
Right.
she's everywhere, and it really, I would say, for me, this story not only solidified her character
Mhm.
and the type of hero she is and what her thoughts are, it really made you care about the character. It really did. And Supergirl, that was probably the purpose of this comic, but it probably wasn't the main purpose. But at the same time, I think Tom King wanted to write her as like, hey, listen, she is serious.
Yes.
She's a serious character.
Absolutely. And like there's a ton of great quotes and things and that Ruthye tells Supergirl about Supergirl, how great she is, how interesting she is. She really is inspired by her along this journey. And it's one of the ones that I took out that's towards the back is in the moment of doubt, they will learn as I have of the legend of Supergirl who lost everything, kept on walking. Then they will sell themselves content in their power, knowing someone out there has survived the storm. That tomorrow, when Malice will make its attempt and help is begged from the heavens, there is a woman waiting. And then Supergirl's like, "Oh, I too have sworn above him, but I could not bring myself to his wretchedness." And that's
Yeah.
Supergirl.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole point of why
Yeah.
she couldn't cross that line, right?
She doesn't want to bring herself down to wretchedness, but she also doesn't want to. She never backs down.
Yeah.
So there's a difference
Such a
between
cool moment.
yeah. There's a
Like-
difference between never giving up and then taking what most people consider the easy way out. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. Really, really great read. I would suggest grabbing it.
Yeah, we won't spoil the ending because
No,
it's a true
it's a
Tom,
journey.
for those Tom King fans that have read a Tom King story. It's a true Tom King ending twist, whatever. So we really
there's a little twist. It's
there's a little
fun.
twist,
It's
yes.
fun.
Yeah, so we definitely encourage you to
It's
go
like
out,
200
check this-
pages, right?
Yeah,
Something
this
like
is
that?
8 issues, about 20 pages a piece. Very recent. It is a little wordy, but I would say this is one of my favorite art styles of the year, and this creative team has done really well. And if you've it's different than Supergirl that was on CW. I will say that it is Tom King's Supergirl, right?
Mhm.
He's gonna talk. It's gonna be different. But if you're ever interested in just something a little different, you like female-led superhero stories and things like that, and you want something a little different and just a great cosmic adventure at the end of the day, recommend this story.
Go for it.
Yeah. This is another great episode of Bam Pow Comic Con. This is Andrew Lauder
And Chris Ramos.
signing off.